Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Baka podcast.
Baka.
It's amazing how every time you open your mouth, you prove you're an idiot.
I think it's time to get this podcast just started. Everybody get your notes together. Okay, 3, 2, 1, let's jam. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Baka. We are an anime podcast. Every 2 weeks we come together, we talk about an anime that we've recently watched as if this was a book club, and then we turn the discussion over to our audience to carry on the starting points that we bring in the podcast, and you carry them on to places unknown beyond us. We are currently doing our classic anime picks at the beginning of every year. Jason and Jeremy, the co-hosts, I'll introduce in a second, pick animes that they've always wished they'd seen or that they really aren't super topical at the moment, which we try to do with our anime, but really just something from the past they either want to share because they loved it or they missed out on. We are doing one of those episodes today. We are talking about Cowboy Bebop, the first 13 episodes. To help me discuss this anime, I need the help of my co-host. First off, we have the Nathan Fillion to my Firefly, Jeremy. How you doing?
Hell yeah!
Nice.
I'm doing pretty good. Oh man, I'd love to see another season of that. Yeah, doing pretty good. Just kind of. Well, one thing I did do is I planted some trees this week. We got a couple of pecan trees and persimmons, some apples, and so yeah, yesterday and today especially, I've been out there just digging like crazy, and I'm exhausted, but it's been fruitful.
Played any games? Watched any TV in the past 2 weeks? Just digging?
Not as much as I would have liked, but I did play a little bit. I got to play a little bit of Outer Wilds. I got started, or Outer Worlds, I should say. There's very different.
You're playing Outer Worlds?
Yeah, I got it when it was
dude.
on that discount. Yeah.
So good.
I got through the introductory part where, everybody plays and you go through and try and figure out whether you're going to save, the botanical place or the fish cannery place, which one. And I chose the botanical place, of course. It meshes with my trees. So, but it was really, really cool. And I can't wait to play a little bit more of it. Yeah.
Very cool. We also have the Kevin Sorbo to my Andromeda, Jason.
It's still pretty darn good.
Super successful show.
Yes.
And I don't mind being called Hercules.
Yeah.
My life has been 100% consumed with Path of Exile theory crafting. The new league started yesterday, so far I've only gotten to experience the new league mechanic, which fortunately is super simple. But like they gutted and rebuilt a handful of the ascendancies, and so I grabbed on the one that I've never tried. What's cool is that it then gives you this currency to buy items that it will like randomly pick. A circle on the ground with a little spire. You kill monsters inside the circle, which power it, and then you click it, and it raises a bunch of monsters. Sometimes you'll get a window with something really, really cool in it, and you can do a layaway program where you go, I can't afford that, but I want to defer my points for later, and it'll give you a discount the next time you see it. So I think anything Elementalist is really what people are playing right now. New boss. Then they're stacking skill trees on top of your Atlas, so that's another thing. But is interested in your power level, and so will then pit you against 10 map bosses all at once on a disc in space to see how well you do.
30 minutes later.
I spent more time in a tool building characters than I have played the game.
That can be very satisfying.
Yeah, the changes they did were cool, and now I'm jonesing for the end game content because they did a complete rework of the end game. So
Sweet.
All right, back from that, and my name is Troy. I recently got to play Phasmophobia with all of my daughters. Online 4-player horror game where you're ghost hunters trying to discover what type of ghost is in the building, so real ghost hunters can come and kill it. And it is the fighting a bull equivalent of fighting ghosts, because you have to make it angry enough to get the evidence of what it is, but also not make it angry enough that it comes out and kill you, which it almost always does. I had my first death, and my wife was in the room, and she's like, "Wait, what's wrong? What's wrong?" Scary guy came crawling out of the hallway. He screamed, door locked, lights out, scared. And I hid behind my own child at one point when the ghost was in their room.
Noble.
No, I've seen some gameplay of it, and watching someone like the lights start flickering, so they start bolting for the front door, and then the front door closes and locks before they can get out. That is the most terrifying thing ever.
That's what happened. And basically, so I ran to the corner, and then I was like huddled in the corner, and I noticed she's standing in front of me, like, oh, it'll get her first. Wait, that's my kid. I'm supposed to like save her.
Fictional world, it's okay.
Yeah, it's fine. Very fun. My movie list is going well.
How
two.
was Matrix?
That's actually tonight. Last night I watched Terminator 2.
Oh, okay.
It's still good. Still good. And I also got to see Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, which was a really good British spy movie without like James Bond action. Like it's the espionage. It's the if we get caught, we're dead. But there's no shootouts or car chases. It's all the thrill of the hunt and the espionage and the hiding stuff. It was really good.
I never even heard of that one.
It was good. Me neither, and that's why I was most excited about it. I almost never don't hear about movies, and it's on my list of 100 top movies, and I'm like, oh, this is gonna be great.
How'd I miss this?
All right, so we're gonna start talking about Cowboy Bebop, and we'll start with our non-spoiler review of what our impression was. This was Jason's choice, so we'll let him go first.
I was absolutely impressed with not just the anime itself, but also its test of time. It's amazing that even something that was because this was in 1998. Is that right?
Sure.
I'm not sure.
Is that Google to you?
Yeah, this blows away stories that are being created today, and this is just a comedy, fairly lighthearted sci-fi romp. I mean, it's got some serious notes, but at its heart, it's telling a fairly Firefly-ish type story, and I was blown away at the writing mostly, because this didn't. It's funny for something so old. It didn't feel tropey at all. Like even the main protagonist. So yeah, it was definitely worth a watch.
All right, Jeremy, what did you think?
I've tried to watch it before, and I always stopped after the first episode. I just couldn't get into the groove with this. But I thought, maybe this time seeing it, the full first season would change my opinion of it. But I just kind of found it sort of meh, kind of a little bit boring, very melodramatic. I absolutely love the art, though. The art is beautiful, and the world building is great. You can kind of get lost in seeing all the different places, because it sort of takes you on a tour through this first season of the solar system, and that part's really, really cool. And I think you mentioned, and I don't remember if it was just in our private chat or if you mentioned it maybe when we were talking about it last week, but they cared so much about the art that they, down to a granular level, even got was it the barrels of the gun that they.
Yeah, I think I mentioned. I do think I mentioned that last week on the podcast, and it's something I had read a while ago that you can see what their type of bullet their guns are calibered for when the details hitting its peak.
Yeah, so I was really impressed with things like that and how they drew the characters, but I don't know, I couldn't really get on with most of the characters. The music, I do have to admit, I'm very biased against blues. I don't know what it is. It drives me up the wall harmonica is the same thing. So like there was at least one episode in this where I was just gritting my teeth the whole time. But I think that may have been more me than anything else. But I don't know. It's not really. It's sort of I could take it or leave it.
All right. I first saw Cowboy Bebop back when it aired back on Toonami, and it was one of like my first serious anime. Like I was watching Sailor Moon, I was watching Dragon Ball Z, and I loved those animes. And then came Cowboy Bebop, and I was like, oh, this is like on a different level. This is a different type of storytelling. There's spaceships, but there's not like robots that power up. No one's powering up.
That's true.
There's just long segments of people staring into the scenery, dealing with their emotions. It lets the emotions hang. When we talked about Premiere, we talked about how it was, style over substance. And I think Cowboy Bebop is the perfect marriage of substance and style. It has style in spades, but I think it's also telling a very complex story, and it's not skimping on taking care of its characters and stuff. I'm actually a little intimidated to talk about this one because it's on so many lists. It's been reviewed so many times, and we are Baka Baka Baka. But the themes that they deal with, the existentialism. I'm not saying
Existentialism.
that. Thank you. That one. Those themes.
I'm here for it.
And just concepts of there is a love of storytelling that I think this entire show is a celebration of movies and TV, so much so that it is bringing homage to so many things before it, and then so many things have homaged it going forward. It's just a peak, not of anime, of creativity in all storytelling, movies, TV, anime, comic books. So it just really is one of those tentpole things in our history. So I'm gonna gush about it. Fair warning. All right. The intro and the outro. What do you guys think?
The outro was okay, but the intro was popping. I watched it probably 6 or 8 times because it just that beginning beat, like you did at the beginning of our show, just kind of gets you ready for it. And and I like the stylized. Like I normally don't like that kind of stylized animation, but it fit really well with what this show is. So.
I was all right with the outro, but the intro is just I just don't like that music. That just kind of overrode everything about the style for me.
It's okay to be wrong.
And I was gonna say this before I knew what Jeremy was gonna say. I don't think there's a better intro in anime. Tank is the best, and not only that, there is things going on in the background of the visuals. You're getting really cool visual styles to introduce the characters, the ships, the guns. They're showing you we've designed all this stuff. Here's how the ships open and work, and here's a robot eye from one of the characters. But there's words that are always in the background that they're like running across and like almost trying to escape from. And so I was like, this is the first time I really focused down on them because I wanted to bring something extra to the podcast. So I'm going to read what the words actually say. Sometimes there's a list of the character names, but it's really a manifesto of what this whole anime is about. So it's 2 paragraphs that are mashed together, and I'll tell you when they kind of switch it. Once upon a time in New York City in 1941, at this club open to all corners to play night after night at a club named Minson's Playhouse. In Harlem, they play jazz sessions competing with each other. Young jazzmen with a new sense are gathering. At last, they created a new genre itself. They are sick and tired of the conventional fixed-style jazz. They're eager to play jazz more freely as they wish then. Then comes the break. In 2071, in the universe, the bounty hunters who are gathering in the spaceship Bebop will play freely without fear of risky things. They must create new dreams and films by breaking traditional styles. The work, which becomes a new genre itself, will be called Cowboy Bebop. And I do really think that is the central theme of this entire thing. Like I said, it's storytelling love and taking all these different genres and mashing them together and trying to create something new, much like jazz music that they're talking about. Obviously, there's love for music installed. It is, like I said, it is substance and style to its peak.
Hmm.
And I like the ending too. All right, let's go on to our spoiler section now. So if you haven't somehow not seen Cowboy Bebop, which I found out that that's more common than I thought, but we are going to be spoiling it. The first 13 episodes, because of the way the format and how much time we have for these older episodes, we can only do the first half. But it's the first 13 episodes. But we'll kind of get our take on the feel of it and everything. Okay, so we start in a galaxy where Earth has basically been ruined. People still live on it, but it's in ruins. There was a huge catastrophe. We've taken to the stars, and we have these gates that we can travel faster than light speed at to reach other planets in our own solar system. But there was an accident with the one at Earth, and it's now been trashed. So we now live on different asteroids and planets and moons throughout the solar system, and humans use these gates to go back and forth. And one of the things
ring, isn't it? Like a halo ring?
Oh, they're gates. Oh, you mean one of the places that people live is like a ring?
One of the asteroids might be.
I didn't notice.
Yeah, there was one that when they looked off in the distance, it kind of like went up.
Oh.
I think it was like episode 1 or 2. But anyways, go on.
One of the things I really loved about the setting of this, and it kind of ties into that nothing really matters, is that we've gone to space. We're in the future, and everything still looks the same. And now there's a new Tijuana. It looks just like the old Tijuana, and everything's still kind of trashy and banged up. And isn't the future cool?
It kind of feels like exactly how real life would progress into the future. So much would stay the same. We would just have a new level of technology.
There are some things that kind of stood out to me like sore thumbs. One of them is the way that they fly around, I should say, in their single-person ships and just kind of land wherever they want. There's no air traffic control telling them what airspace they're restricted to. And yet cops also have, like, cops show up sometimes only after they've blown things up. Like, I don't know, it seems to me like that part didn't make sense very much. Like, every single place that they go to is so backwater that cops only ever show up if you blow something up. I don't know. It just...
You've obviously never been to Tijuana. Okay. I haven't either. So our show takes place mostly on the spaceship, the Bebop, which is a ship owned by Jet and his teammate Spike, who are bounty hunters who in this are now called cowboys, and that's the show Cowboy Bebop. We first meet them while they're getting ready to have some dinner, some beef and bell peppers, and there's no beef because they are very poor. And we meet our main character, Spike. So let's start with talking about him. What do you guys think of Spike?
I really love Spike in this whole thing. He's one of these kind of overpowered protagonists a little bit as far as like human ability, but what I think I liked about it is a lot of it was kind of hand-waved through his background, and then also like he's a bounty hunter. He hunts people all the time. So this is kind of his job to be this good at combat and finding people. But I love his attitude. I love the way he approaches problems, and just things just go out of control all the time for him. But deep down, like there's so many scenes that just kind of show how soft he is in the heart, even though he'll tell you he hates kids, pets, and women with bad attitudes.
Women with bad attitudes.
I don't know. I thought he was kind of cool, but at the same time, all the characters have so much baggage, and he's one of the two that I think has the most baggage. That it just kind of felt sometimes a little bit annoying that he would have to. I don't know. His flaws seemed more in the center, in the spotlight, than his good qualities. His good qualities were they kind of had to really, really push to be visible. And by that, what I mean is like the things that actually benefited him as a bounty hunter, because he's been doing this for a while now, but he still just kind of throws himself at whatever the issue is. Or he'll take really unusual routes, like he does in the first episode, where he goes to a medicine man and asks basically, "Where do I go?" and that just
works.
and it does work. There's another time later where there's a bad guy, a bounty is doing the same thing sort of, and it works, which is really unusual to me. Is it just coincidental that it worked twice for these characters, or is that a factor of this world? I don't know. But yeah, Spike was entertaining. I definitely caught the reference to, like, there's moments where he reminds me of Bruce Lee, and I think that's intentional.
His fighting style is literally Bruce Lee's fighting style. And he even quotes him about, like, the be like water. Water can fill a vessel, but it can also crush a rock. That's literally Bruce Lee's words. And yes, they modeled all his fighting style after Bruce Lee. He is Bruce Lee incarnate when it comes to fighting.
Yeah, that's really cool. I guess, I don't know, I guess I found him to be a little bit irritating sometimes when he would just say, well, I'm just going to go do this thing. I don't care what anybody thinks. I don't care what anybody thinks. And then he'd come back later. I'm back. I can come in? All right, cool. It was just annoying. Time for gushing.
Spike is the central philosophy of the show, right? I wanted to mention the fighting, which you already did, and I love that they took like a real world fighter and put it into a character, so that when he did these things, it was kind of like, oh yeah, that is, there was a guy who did that. There was that philosophy, and it worked. It's also hard because I don't want to spoil anything, and I know where Cowboy Bebop goes again, and I've seen the whole show. I've seen the movie. I own the movie. It's on DVD right upstairs for me. But to me, he's a man stuck in life. He's not suicidal, but he's not living either. He's like on pause, and I think he does throw himself at these things, not to be a hero, to do something interesting, because he literally is just floating in space with nothing to do, waiting for his life to start or end. And okay, so here's now this crazy mission. That'll work for now. And I think it's a really fun thing to explore, especially since he is so cool. He's like, also, everyone on the show smokes. Smoking has never looked funner to do. Please don't. Smoking's not good for you. That must be the stinkiest ship in the whole galaxy, how much they smoke on it. But like, yeah, he's smoking. He's fighting like Bruce Lee. He's just so cool, and he's just so not happy. And I think it's fun to explore. I think he's a great character, and I do really like where they take him in the second half, but I will not say anything about that. Okay, let's talk about his partner. Oh man, guys, this is the old guy of the anime.
Yeah.
And at one point, I'm like, maybe I just always saw him as the old guy. And then at one point, the characters actually call him the old man. And I'm like, oh. And then they're like, he's 36. And I'm like, I'm 37. And ever since that's happened, I have just been dealing with some things. Okay. I've never been older than the old guy on the anime, or that I paid enough attention to. All right. Anyway, your guys' thoughts on Jets. Go ahead.
Jeremy, you really like this character, right?
Yeah, I actually really like Jet. He's kind of down to earth compared to the rest of the crew. I mean, we get one that's like, people actually confuse her for an alien at times. And so Jet is kind of the straight guy. He does have his own baggage, but it's kind of light, really. You don't see it surface very much at all, except for one episode. But but he's genuinely concerned about the well-being of his friends, and he's ex-police, and so he's already kind of used to operating in a group, and wants to take care of them. And I don't know, it just kind of, I think it was more. I think the reason I liked him was probably more because the other ones irritated me, and so it pushed me to overcorrect to like Jet. Because honestly, my major criticism of the show, from my opinion, is that it's boring, and he's the most boring of the main characters. So that kind of just doesn't make a lot of sense. So the only thing I can think of is that liking him is my version of overcorrecting. But yeah, he's pretty cool.
What do you think, Jason?
Jet was yeah, he's definitely the old man of the group, but I think what I really appreciate about him is he's always doing his best to make correct decisions and not rash ones. And he ends up getting overpowered as far as who's making decisions all the time. Because he's not a pushover, but he's also not going to tell someone or he's not going to impose his will on someone else to force them to do what he thinks. I think he puts more trust in Spike than Spike puts in him. But their relationship is fantastic, and I think he didn't really grab me until we got his backstory episode, and just kind of showed where he came from and like his heart. And then we get some new crew members. And that just kind of completed that character for me. But yeah, I really like Jet as far as like the old man of the group.
I love that Jet has to take in stray dogs. He can't help himself, but it's also a flaw. And I actually disagree with you, Jason, that he does want to control the actions of others. In fact, it has ruined relationships in his past. They literally come in with broken ships and are like, Jet will fix it. Jet will find us food. Jet will get us jobs. And he does, because he has to be in control. He has to be the one running this crew. It's both a flaw and something that I feel bad for him, because he's clearly being used, but it's also something he needs. It's his big character flaw. And when he loses control of them, it frustrates him to no end. Don't leave. And they're like, it's not like we're not a team. We're not in a contract. We work together because we could. There's no reason I can't leave. I'm a free person. He's like, no, if you leave, you're never coming back. Like, it bugs him to when they do things he thinks is stupid. He's like a parent, and I've felt that way. I have 19-year-old daughters, and I'm like, that's dumb. But if you want to come back here, I will let you. I love you, and I am supportive of you. And I like how they explore that through Jet. And yes, him being the old guy is so depressing. All right, so yeah, they have a bounty to go after in Tijuana. Now, Tijuana, like I said, is not in Mexico. It is in an asteroid now. And we meet our villain, whose name is Asimov, and he has his pregnant girlfriend with him, and they go to a bar, and Asimov is actually trying to sell drugs to the bartender. He has stolen a very new synthetic drug from what's called the Syndicate, which is basically the most powerful mob in the solar system right now. He demonstrates it for the bartender to show him that it's effective. Meanwhile, a bunch of Syndicate thugs show up and start shooting up the bar. And with the drug, he's able to, have super reflexes, and he takes out all the Syndicate members. And then him and his girlfriend flee. And it's called Bloody Eye is the name of the drug. Meanwhile, Spike goes to an old Indian sage. I mentioned you guys in the pre-show. I have this theory that what we're seeing in Cowboy Bebop is real, but it's also supposed to be hyper real or not realistic on purpose. Like, it's supposed to feel dreamlike or like a movie. It's supposed to feel like, wow, that was a really huge coincidence, and it wants that to happen so that the reality, and I think it ties into both also to Spike of, man, I just don't feel like I'm living my life because I feel like I'm just stuck in a movie or I'm stuck in a dream. And this is kind of one of them. Spike goes to an old Indian sage, and the guy's like, oh, go to this place, and it works out. This guy gives him a tip, and he goes to a gas station, and he runs into Asimov and his girlfriend. He meets him in the bathroom and just like walks away from him, and then he goes and talks to the pregnant girlfriend, and he reveals to the girlfriend after stealing some food from her, Spike's hungry. He didn't get the beef. he mentions he's a bounty hunter, and then Asimov chokes him from behind and knocks him out, and her and Asimov run away. And Jet shows up later, and Spike's just sleeping on the ground, like taking a nap. And he's like, "You gonna get up?" Yeah, I guess I will.
See, this was the first moment where I'm like, okay, this anime is being weird. Like, I don't get it. I don't understand why he's laying there sleeping. He's just got that much emotion and that much baggage that he's just gonna relax. Got a bounty to catch, but he's just gonna relax on the concrete.
What's he gonna do?
I don't get it.
It's just Spike.
He's just recovering.
It's okay.
I think what I liked
fight
about
and digest.
That makes sense.
One of the things I liked about that kind of sold me on Spike, especially in this episode, was that he knows that the person he's talking to is part of his mark, or at least, knows his mark. And he ends up in a very short window, develops a tiny relationship with this person enough to where when Asimov's about to kill him, and he said he wanted to, he was going to dispatch him, she stops him. Just because of that, charismatic way about him of, winning people over. And he does that a lot throughout this anime, which I don't know, I found endearing.
Which is weird, because the way he wins them over is almost by being like disattached or detached from them. Like,
he's the coolest cat in the room.
Yeah, he's so cool, and that's what his charisma is. It's just effervescent, and so they all fall in love with him for that. And I don't know, for me that kind of fits into the noir category where you have the detective is just so cool, everybody loves him. And that just always boggles my mind. And I'm like, I'm sorry, that wasn't actually a meaningful conversation you just had. That doesn't make any sense to me why you developed a relationship with this person. But it's artistic flair. I get it.
So Asimov goes to the next bar he's going to sell at, and he tries to sell to a man in a sombrero, and it's Spike waiting for him. And Spike has already stolen some of the drug from him the last time they had an encounter, which, was part of the plan, I guess. Mm-hmm. And have a really cool fight out in front of this bar.
Yeah, they do.
But the syndicate shows up and disrupts them, and Asimov and his girlfriend jump into a spaceship. Actually, she gets hit in the belly, and drugs spill out of her stomach instead of,
Yeah, because it's implied she's pregnant, worse. But the moment you see her, you're like, oh, she's got something hidden in her dress.
Yeah, she wasn't pregnant. She was hiding the drugs. Mm-hmm. So they jump in the ship, and they fly away. Spike chases after him, and he's fighting off the syndicate ships that are chasing them. And Asimov is flying right towards a crowd of police that are like, they're not leaving, right? And she realizes her dream of going to Mars is never going to happen, which she had talked about earlier in the episode. And she takes her, who's now clearly way over into the drug, right? Like he's literally just breaking the bottle into his eye instead of doing the sprayer. It's nasty, and she kills him. And the ship goes up into the police, and the police just blow it to smithereens as Spike watches. And this episode ends with Spike and Jet back on the ship having bell peppers and beef with no beef. Like, again, this is what I mean by the themes of it. Like, nothing changed. They went through all this. People were hurt. People died. Nothing changed.
Yeah.
They had no impact on anything.
And they didn't get a reward.
And they almost never get paid.
Yeah. Well, and one thing to me is that this was made in a time when anime were, at least in the West, I don't know what it was like in Japan, but at least in the West, it was very much episodic.
Mhm.
And so doing that just kind of was very Sailor Moonish to me, where it was like, okay, so they start, they're poor, they don't have any money, and then they end and they're still poor, and we're just going to repeat this cycle. And it does do that through, at least through the first season. I don't know about the rest, but in my mind, that was always like, okay, this is just, isn't this what you do to stay episodic? Like, is that really something deeper and more meaningful if it's done in this show than if it's done in Sailor Moon, where it's repetitive and episodic?
I do think because it matches the theme that the characters talk about, I do think it is like intentional. Yes, it is episodic, but things do change from episode to episode. But this is a very episodic anime.
Mhm.
You could literally watch 3 or 4 and skip 1 or 2 and be fine. You wouldn't really miss anything huge. But I do think that helps them play into the theme they're going for, which is, if nothing matters, how do you find something to matter? And that's why they reset back to 0. There's even points where like everyone's dead, and the next episode they're not.
Yeah.
Also, never trust the. I don't know how many times you guys watched past the end credits to the teaser for the next episode, and the English dub. I don't know what the hell they do it in the sub, but the English dub is fantastic. They riff on each other, they make fun of each other. They're trying to like, in this type of episode is going to be really sad. No, it's not, Jet. Don't say that. There could be kids watching. Tell them it's going to be fun. There's a dog.
I would have liked to have seen that. I didn't see that.
Yeah, it's some really fun banter. And then I was watching past for but there's one point where they say you shouldn't trust these end credit introductions. Yeah, so that's the end of the first episode. In the next episode, we start with a new villain. His name is Abdul Hakim, who is clearly based on Hakim Abdul-Jabbar.
Yeah, right. One of Bruce Lee's disciples.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. It's very, very much intentional making Bruce Lee fight him again.
Yep.
Yeah. There is one thing that's a little weird about this anime. Twice, at least in these 13 episodes, characters change race through surgery. Not only do they do face changes and weight changes, they change like everything about them. And I was like, oh, yeah, well, that works past the 90s, but okay. But yeah, and this is one of the characters. But we see him like get attacked by 3 guys in a bathroom. He beats them up, and he has this case. And Spike learns about him from the show Big Shot. Guys, I absolutely love the show Big Shot.
Great.
I do too.
There's a TV show that just talks about the bounties of the day. And
with some great hosts.
So, and there's a group of scientists that are also looking for this package, and Spike decides to go get involved. And while this guy goes to, I think they're on Mars in this episode, but he goes to basically a version of Chinatown, and someone steals the case from him. And when the guy opens the case, he sees an animal inside. So he goes to what he thinks is like this underground pet shop type thing. And meanwhile, Spike's investigation takes him to the same place. He sees the guy with the case trying to sell the case, and he thinks that must be the bad guy, and it's not. And the woman who has a turtle for a hat, she opens the case and she's like, "This is just a regular dog. This is a corgi, a Welsh corgi. It's worth like $2." and everyone's disappointed. Spike's like, "Well, that's not my guy." The thief is like, "Well, I'm not gonna get any money out of this. But I love this dog so much. I actually bought a dog long time ago, the same breed, and I love that dog." Is Ein. I love Ein. He's not a character to talk about. He doesn't have an arc, but I have a shirt with Ein. I probably have worn it on this podcast before. Yeah.
And this dog is animated so well. Oh my god.
Yeah, they do a good job.
Yep. As Spike's leaving, Abdul shows up, and Ein like attacks him, and all the animals get free. And there's this big chase with the scientist and Spike. And eventually, Abdul and Spike face each other on a bridge with Ein in between them, and they fight for a little while till Ein jumps off the bridge and they both jump after him. And the dog like lands on a boat and then jumps back to Spike, so that him and Spike land in the water while Abdul lands on the boat and gets carried away. So Spike takes the dog back to the Bebop, and they're like, we don't know what's with the dog, but if he wants the dog so bad, we'll use him as bait. So he has to go back into town and walk this dog around the city, hoping the bad guy will come for him. And there's another, again, the bad guy goes to a psychic who like the psychic's like, hey, I can help you, as he's walking by. Like, oh, you're looking for something. I will help you. And literally...
He's got a bird that like hops around on different, essentially little tarot card things. It's just really cute but silly. Yeah.
And then the scientists turn on what they call the dog whistle, which basically attracts all dogs to their car, including Ein. And
seems that way.
Abdul steals a car from a wedding and uses it to abduct Ein.
Yeah, punches the groom.
Yeah. And then we get this big freeway chase, Spike in his ship, and the scientists after this. And Ein causes this guy to wreck while jumping out off the freeway pass into the water, and we see Spike choose to go save him. And then the other guys, the scientist and Abdul, all crash into the police station, getting themselves caught. No reward for this one. Spike chose to do the right thing, and now they have a dog on the crew, and they find out it's a data dog, which we were talking about earlier. We don't really know what that means, at least in these episodes. And I don't remember if it's explained. I don't know what it means, and I've seen the show, but it has been a while.
I thought it was kind of weird that nobody got. It didn't even look like they got injured from that crash. I mean, they came off of a bridge and went down. It looked like they went down 100 feet or more.
Weird, isn't it?
It was really weird. They all just standing there just fine with their handcuffs on. Very, very weird.
It makes sense to me.
No, does it?
And I know I already mentioned this to you guys, but along with my this isn't real reality is the fact that these three old guys show up in so many episodes in random different planets, different asteroids. They were in the first episode in both bars that the bad guy went to. And they show up, I think they actually show up in this episode.
In the casino?
Yeah. They show up over and over again, like they're traveling right along with the Bebop, but there's no way they could be. They clearly are like, one guy is like, I dug the asteroid. We all dug the asteroid, man. You tell a story every day.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for me planting those crops and my two buddies, we're the two buddies.
It reminds me of the Trigun Cat, except for these characters have like effect on the show and speak with the other characters. And it really does, I think, emphasize that, is this real? Is this real? Or is this like somebody not being able to think of new characters?
Yeah.
Jeremy might think it's lazy writing. I don't think.
Well, I think I like the idea if it's an artistic approach. I like that idea. But I do think making it something that's story-based, even if it's just, characters that bounce off of the main characters or just kind of there as the main characters walk by, to me, it, like you're saying, it breaks the continuity in a way that with all of the hard sci-fi that they're doing elsewhere, where they've got like mirrors up that are terraforming planets, and they've got really interesting hypergate travel and deceleration gates and just all kinds of interesting stuff where they're clearly trying to be hard sci-fi. It would almost seem like maybe there's something else they could do that didn't involve, completely unbelievable things that are happening with characters. Maybe they could do it with the art style. Maybe they could do it with sound effects, or even just the camera work lingering in different ways than it did. But using actual characters in the story, just to me, it kind of breaks the immersion rather than adds a layer of artistic, suspension of, is this real?
I want to say something. This is really important because, we might get comments about this episode. I don't know. But while I will disagree with him the entire podcast, please, you got to respect Jeremy's bravery to come out and be like, hey, this is fully my opinion. Yes, I'm aware this is held atop Mount Olympus as anime. Yeah. I 100% respect that, right? I do.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I kept seeing it as number 1 on all the top lists, so maybe that just got my expectations too high. I don't know.
Okay, but stay away from Fullmetal Alchemist.
Okay.
And Evangelion. Evangelion's another one I would be intimidated to talk about.
It's all right.
And overanalyzed. Okay, Honky Tonk Woman is the next episode, and we see a very well animated young woman enter into a shop, and some thugs show up to the shop, and she blasts away with an MP5 at them, but gets captured anyway.
Right.
This is another one of our main characters, Faye Valentine. Jeremy, I know you had some strong thoughts about her, so I'm gonna let you go first.
Okay. So obviously as a teenager, I liked Faye in the little bit that I saw her, because I saw more than just the first episode. Here and there, I would catch an episode when it happened to air on Toonami or whatever. But yeah, so Faye was popular to me back then. But watching her as a character this time, I actually found her really irritating. The sheer quantity of baggage that she has is just, it's so much. She's so egotistical. And maybe it's just the first season. Maybe they're just building her up so that they can actually have her develop on an arc. That's cool. You know, you have to put really good flaws in characters if that's what you're going to do. But oh my gosh, the taste that's left in my mouth with this character, I find her irritating. There's a point where she leaves the ship, she breaks stuff behind her, and she steals all their money. And then she's acting like, she's like moping, and she's acting like she's put out when one of them comes to rescue her. And I'm like, you horrible, horrible person. You are so self-centered. And it just, I don't know. I found her very irritating for that reason. Some of the things I did like about her, though, was, beyond the obvious, was, oh yeah, and she has no butt. That was really annoying to me, too. Like, there's so many shots where she's got no butt.
You call her a honky tonk woman and you forgot to animate the back end.
Exactly. There's no honky tonk there. But some of the things I liked about her was that she was very free spirited when on the ship, and it was really entertaining to see her interaction. She was extremely playful with them, and I liked those interactions most of the time. They were really entertaining. And then also it cracked me up how she always had her own way of trying to dupe everybody and trying to come up with some plan where she would get, 80% or more of whatever the valuable thing was. And it seems to always backfire no matter what she did. And I really got a kick out of that. So it's not all bad, but she's not my favorite character.
All right, Jason, what'd you think?
I think this opening scene is actually a fantastic summary of her place in this anime. She's boastful, she's egotistical, and she walks into the shopkeeper and she's like, the best way to win a gunfight, shoot first. And she just starts, raining lead out the front door, and then she gets caught anyways. Like, this is like, it happens to her over and over again. She keeps making terrible decisions because she wants to do what she wants to do, and she ends up broke and needing help nearly every time. I mean, she ends up stranded in space because she ran out of fuel. Like, and I think it is a little endearing for me, and I think it's just because she's always getting her comeuppance. And when she is cooperating with the team, things tend to go well for her. But then when she doesn't, it doesn't. So yeah, I found her entertaining beyond the way she's drawn. Also, I like that Jet alluded to her being a little older than she looks.
Yeah. And it makes me wonder if she's actually way older than she looks, because she keeps saying that. She keeps bringing it up at different points, too. I'm older than I look.
I really like Faye a lot. But I have the pleasure of knowing her backstory. As a matter of fact, I'm going to be continue watching this, and I've already started a little bit farther. Again, I know everything that happened, so I'm not even spoiling myself for what we're talking about on the podcast. But I started watching this, and my 13-year-old daughter joined me, and I was like, oh, well, every time I put on an old anime, they're like, oh, well, they didn't really have the money back then, or the animation's come a long way, hasn't it, Dad? She was into this, and she made me promise to finish it and watch the movie. So before we recorded this podcast, we watched another 2 episodes, and we got to Faye's backstory episode, and it does help a lot. I do actually agree with Jeremy that she has a lot of things that make her annoying, but it's intentional, and there's reasons they're there. I will say for these 13 episodes, though, I like her as a foil to Spike, who's so cool that there's someone who sees through his BS, who can at least stand up to him. You know, she's not going to beat him in a fist fight, but she's not bad in a fight herself, and can hold her own with the crew. I think she's a great addition to the cast, and that she brings the very qualities he would hate, him being so cool. And just to grind on his gears. And yeah, I can see how it would grind on a viewer's gears as well. But I think that just brings us that great dynamic and chemistry to the team by having that little bit of friction there.
And she's got a fantastic set of dice.
Yeah. She can always make them show snake eyes.
Right.
And yeah, it goes vice versa. I love that everything that Faye's good at, Spike sees right through too. Like, okay, you should probably give him his money back.
At least give him his clothes.
So Miss Valentine winds up in front of a casino owner who thinks she's someone who she may or may not be, called the Poker Alice. And he wants her to be a dealer, and he needs someone basically who can control the game. With sleight of hand, and she's to go take all of this guy's money. He'll tip her his last chip. The chip will be important, and he'll take it to the mob boss. Meanwhile, Jet had a dream where a guy told him to go gambling. Basically. And so he takes Spike to the casino, and he's like, Spike, your eyes are too fast. Don't go gamble. You'll get in trouble.
You'll get us in trouble. I'm trying to have a good time.
Spike goes gambling. He sits at Faye's table. He loses all his money. He keeps his last chip. She thinks he's the guy. So she runs after him, and she's like, you gotta give me that. He's like, whatever. You cheated the entire game, like out loud in the middle of the casino. You were cheating the whole time, and I stayed quiet. I'm keeping the chip. And then he eats the chip. I should have also mentioned earlier, he had to put out a cigarette, and he ate the cigarette, and then we find out he was able to spit the cigarette back out later. Hey, it's an establishing shot for important story reasons. So he eats the chip. A big shootout erupts in the casino. The guy and Spike actually now has the chip. This is an insane coincidence. Again, to the point where I think, again, to create that hyper reality. But if not, insane coincidence in storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
Where Spike bumps into the contact and they actually do trade chips. So now Spike literally does have the special chip that she thinks he has. He pretends to eat it. Big shootout. She gets her ship, which has remote control, so she can call it. I really love her ship too. I love Spike's ship. It's like a red racer.
Her ship's so much cooler.
Yeah, it's got like arms and gun arms to it. I love the whole idea of the Bebop, which is like this giant, ugly fishing ship, very similar to like Firefly and Millennium Falcon. Like, it's not pretty, but it opens up and like here's our racer, here's our fighter. And it's like hey, here's our old transport ship, and then we open up and here's a Ferrari inside. that's very 80s, very cool.
Why did they call it a fishing ship? Was it ever used for ship fishing?
I think that's why it can land in water. Yes.
But all of their ships can land in water.
Can they?
Yeah, but the front of the Bebop actually looks like a boat. Like the front of a boat.
Yeah, I think it's specially designed to land on water. I didn't think other ships could.
Well, we saw the swordfish, and we saw the other one land in water.
Yeah, Jet, when he has to land after trying to catch that boat, he lands in the water.
Jet's would make sense, because I would think he would match the theme of his big ship. I didn't know. Maybe Spike's did.
I thought it did. Maybe I'm misremembering, but I really thought it did. And
I still like the design.
Also, doesn't Spike's ship get blown up like 4 or 5 times, and he still gets
Yeah,
another one.
Spaceships gets blown to smithereens in one of the episodes.
Where do you
Like, there's
think all their
nothing
money goes? They do actually catch bounties in this show, and they're still always broke. 'Cause they
between
can-
episodes. Yeah.
I guess that they made that point in the first episode. He's like, after all the repairs, there is no more money.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, even when we're successful, we drive up costs so much. So I think that matches. They actually capture Faye and take her back to the ship, and they're like, okay, you're gonna give us money because of what you've done, robbing us at the casino. She calls the mob boss secretly to basically get him there so that she has a chance to escape. And then they realize the chip is special, and it's actually a microchip. And then the mob boss does show up, and he's like, "Hey, I want my microchip." And they're like, "Okay, we know what this is. We know it deciphers." It was very important. I didn't write it down.
It's a skeleton key of some kind. Yeah.
Right,
To
just
a key.
some super program, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was an algorithm that could crack any code, but to use the algorithm, you needed the microchip to activate it.
So a cipher. Mm-hmm.
So they asked for $30 million for it, and they go out to do the exchange out in space, and Spike's in his spacesuit, and they try to betray him. He manages to beat the goons and get the chip back, but Faye has escaped, gets in her ship,
Takes the money,
and runs. The bad guys die from their own missiles coming back at them, and so Spike and Jet are like, well, we have one poker chip, and let's go to the casino and see if we can make a profit, because it's not worth anything else now. And that's how the episode ends. But the next episode, we find Faye again, now out of gas.
Just stranded around Jupiter.
Hanging out by Jupiter. She comes across some wreckage, and there's a dead body inside, and the dead body's like, take this package, it's very important, don't open it. And she takes it, like, oh, I gotta open this. And there's this funny little device inside. Meanwhile, Jet and Spike are hunting a bounty target, but some eco-terrorists who are mad that this bounty target is eating some meat in a restaurant kill the bounty target and a bunch of people in the restaurant. So Jet and Spike are like, well, we'll just take the leader of them. She's got a bounty too. She has a name, but I think it's Maria, but they call her Mom. All the terrorists call her Mom. And so they arrest her.
Nicely creepy.
Yeah.
It has this weird creepy vibe.
And we find out like these eco-terrorists used to be friendly eco, protesters, but have since turned into terrorists under her rule. But yeah, they have this very familial relationship with her. But when they get her on the ship, the government rescinds the bounty. And we find out that the terrorists are saying they have this virus that they can turn people into animals. Basically, it turns humans into monkeys. And they're threatening, I think it's a Mars city. But anyway, it's the government of this one place. And so they've rescinded their bounty. And basically, the Bebop has to give her back. But they find Faye. Literally just flying past Jupiter, they find her. Again, this is one of the things I'm like, that is so astronomically impossible that it can't be an accident. Like it's like something you would think of in your imagination, but then be like, oh, but in real life that wouldn't work, but you went with it anyway.
Right, because like their highways to get from place to place is in subspace.
Yeah, they have a hyperspace. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so there's no reason to just be cruising by Jupiter.
Exactly.
Unless the gates go from planet to planet, like you have to go from.
Yeah, unless they were going in between gates at
Jupiter. Asteroid belt to Mars to.
Ganymede, I think, is what they said it was.
It is Ganymede. I don't know what that is.
It's a moon. I'm not sure which planet it's a moon for. Maybe it's a moon in Jupiter.
I'm not sure it's important at the moment.
Well, I mean, it does explain why they might be going in regular space past Jupiter.
But even just flying past Jupiter, Jupiter is pretty big.
Yeah, it is.
You're flying past a very specific. Okay, You'd have to be flying past a specific part of Jupiter, really.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, for some reason, Faye must have just needed to go in the same exact route for.
Well,
Oh, well.
it's someone else flew by, so it makes sense that it would be maybe an
A known
in-between
route.
gate point. Yeah, like a normal, and that would make sense why she's there is because she was on her way between gates. But anyways,
They capture Faye. They want their money back. She spent it all gambling. Faye has a gambling problem, which is weird because she can cheat at gambling and always wins, but also always loses. Always.
That was another thing that bugged me. Yes.
well, no, when she's in control of the betting, that's when she wins all the time. When she goes to a legitimate casino, she always loses.
Spike gets a device from her and he's trying to figure out how to open it. Meanwhile, just so you know, it's the virus. And the mom is like,
This was funny.
freaking out as like Spike's biting it and kicking it. And eventually he pulls out his gun and just shoots it open.
Her eyes are bulging.
Yeah.
She won't say anything, though.
They return her to the terrorist. And then the terrorists run away and the cops are chasing them, but that ends up being a decoy. And then the terrorists are like, hey, we decided we are going to shoot the virus at Ganymede. And they do. And so Spike and Faye, well, Spike goes, he's going to go into the hypergate and he's going to attack the missiles and stop them from hitting anything, and then they'll be able to get the bounty again. Faye agrees to help for 60% of the cut. But as they're fighting it, they get all but one, and that one breaks into like dozens of warheads. So the government decides they're just going to close the hypergate so that nothing can come out. So they have to race the rockets, and it's really cool action scene. And they get out of the gate right in time. And then because it's in subspace, the rockets can't hit anything. And then you find out on the terrorist ship that the virus, Spike had noticed her eyes bulging and had slipped it into her pocket so that they could fall out, and they all die or turn into monkeys.
Turn into monkeys, ethereal monkeys that can't interact with anyone because
right, yeah, and they're also stuck in the hypergate.
So, question.
Is that hypergate shut forever?
Well, that's a very good question, but that's not what I was thinking of.
Okay.
My question was, if they could shut the hypergate, what did it cost them to shut it? Was there any kind of damage? It didn't seem to me that there was any kind of damage. Like, nobody unexpectedly got stuck in the hyperspace except for these people and their bombs, their missiles. So why couldn't they just shut that? Why wasn't that plan A? Why wasn't that plan A? Why was plan A to send in these two bounty hunters to try and blow up missiles that are coming out of it? Because they weren't in the hyperspace gate. They didn't go through it until they got the orders to do so.
Perhaps closing the gate would also close other people that were not involved, that were also happen to be traveling in it at the same time.
That's what I was wondering, if there was something like that, but they never mention that that's a concern or that it happened or anything like that. And so I just kind of passed it off like that couldn't have been the case.
Yeah, they don't explain it. My assumption was that this was like a longer term thing. Like, okay, blow up the freeway. Like, just destroy the freeway so that the kamikaze car coming down it can't hit the city. And then the freeway is just gone until you can rebuild it. But I don't know. We don't know very much about the gates at all anyway. We even find out here for the first time that an object in subspace cannot affect an object in space, but you can still see it. So they're like, missiles. Oh, it's fine.
Which is also weird because that object, they're witnessing it moving in this like ethereal, you can see it and everything. It's still moving the same speed. So why is it moving the same speed if it's in hyperspace?
It's a ghost missile.
Also, relativistic speeds that you would be achieving, if they're doing relativistic speeds and it's not like just some sort of like fold, where you're not actually traversing the space or the distance, but you're just traversing between the point of entry to the point of exit, and it's a very short distance, then I would explain why they're not going any faster.
I would assume it's that one because, I mean, they're literally like turning around and like maneuvering in that space and like hitting a wall. Spike hits the edge a little bit and like bounces off. So I would assume that it's that second one.
Yeah, it's got to be, because I was trying to figure out, like, why would you need a virus? All you need is just to dump some of your garbage out of your airlock at relativistic speeds and the planet's toast. Like, you don't need any of this. But this makes sense if it's just like a wormhole kind of thing.
So we come to our first real lore-heavy episode, which starts with a mobster named Mao, who's part of the syndicate, talking with a rival gangster who I believe is also in the syndicate, and basically signing a contract for peace. Like, hey, we gotta stop killing each other. This is getting nuts. Let's just be done with that part of our feud and move on. Then a silver-haired man who's also of the syndicate comes in, murders both of them, blows up one as they're leaving, and then kills everybody else. And this is our main villain of the series. His name is Vicious. He is a syndicate member and a former ally of Spike. What did you guys think of Vicious in the time we got with him?
Didn't get a ton of time with him, so I'm super interested in him just because he seems to be just as skilled, but he's definitely evil, or at least he has evil ends. And yeah, this episode's a little messed up with what he does with Faye and this minister and the concert. But yeah, the combat scene we'll get to with him and Spike was super cool. I did like it.
He confuses me. He says two things at once that are in complete contradiction with each other. At one point in time, he says that that he has to follow rules, and like that's the reason he's mad at Spike. Basically, is because Spike doesn't follow rules. And then at another point in time, he tells a subordinate that the subordinate has to betray him. And like, if you're mad at people because they don't follow rules, why do you tell someone to break the rules? It was just, he's very confusing as a character. He almost seems to me like he's a little bit crazy, a little bit insane.
I'll be honest, Vicious is a character I have a hard time. I don't have a full grasp on. One good thing about coming back to this after doing this podcast for so long and getting better. I wouldn't say being good at it all, but getting better at trying to deep dive and dig a little underneath. I don't remember enough or have seen enough from these episodes to really get what Vicious's full philosophy is, what his end goal is. I'm feeling like it's a little bit of a counterpoint to Spike, whereas Spike is like I said, a man paused. Vicious is a man who is carving out what he wants, refusing to pause, refusing to let things settle. But I'm not sure, and I am kind of interested in as I continue watching this, what is going to develop with him. I will say, while it is both insanely stupid, it is also insanely cool to have a samurai sword gunfight. I just love it. I love it. It makes no sense. It's like, hey, you brought a sword to a gunfight. Yeah, but I'm the bad guy, so it's okay, I guess. Yeah. And I'm winning.
Well, and they say within 20 feet, a knife is much deadlier than a gun at that point.
Right.
Yeah.
So as long as he stays in close range, and yeah, I mean, again, I know some of what's coming with Vicious and stuff, and I think he's a very cool bad guy, but he's not one of the characters I have sat and thought about as much, whereas like Spike and Faye, I definitely have taken some time to what was all that, what was going on there. Not so much with Vicious for me. So when Spike finds out that there's actually a bounty on the guy who died, but when he hears this, he runs out because apparently he knows him, and Jet's like, hey, you shouldn't be leaving. He's like, no, I'm leaving. And he does. Jet gets all mad, and there's a phone call for Jet, and Faye overhears it about the same guy, and she's like, well, hot tip for me, I'll go get the bounty. So she goes to a concert and talks her way in and gets all the way to Mao's private office or private booth, and he's like his mouth is slit open or his throat is slit open when he's just sitting there, and Vicious is in there and he's like, hey, you're Faye Valentine, Spike. I'm gonna capture you now. Also, this is like one of the few English dubs that even subtitle lovers will be like, no, that one's fine. That English dub is fine.
Yeah. I saw that in one of the top 100 reviews. People were like, doesn't matter whether you watch the dub or the sub, they're both spectacular.
Spike, yeah. I still hear oh, now I'm gonna blank on the name. But the guy who does Spike's voice, he's gone on to do like Star Wars Rebels. He was the purple Loth Cat, or God, I am messing up names. But he was the purple guy. And so I hear his voice a lot, but every time I do it's Spike. That'll always be Spike. He was in Promare. He was the chief. Steve Bloom. That's his name. He deserves his name. All right. Spike goes and sees an old acquaintance named Annie, who was also in the syndicate, and she thought he was been dead for 3 years. And he's like, nope, haven't been. What happened with my friend? She's like, well, it was Vicious. And this reveal is kind of done simultaneously with Faye. So, hey, Vicious is the bad guy, even though we knew it from the beginning. So it was kind of weird that they revealed it. But yeah, Spike learns Vicious is behind everything. She's like, don't mess with Vicious. He's like, I'm going to mess with Vicious. And he goes back to the ship and he starts like she gives him a gun. And then he goes to the ship and he's got like 10 guns. He's just getting all these guns loaded and ready to fight. And
grenades.
Jet is like, what's going on here? He's like, hey, I got to take care of my past. And then Faye calls them and she's like, I got captured. They say to come to this church. And Jet's like, no. Wait. And Spike's like, nope, I'm going, because that's directly connected to what I'm dealing with here. He goes to the church. He ends up shooting the guy holding Faye hostage, so she's able to get away. And he has this big gunfight with all these syndicate members. Gets shot while running up the stairs, and gets into a one-on-one fight with Vicious, to the point where Vicious throws him out the big stained glass window at the top of the church, down to like there's like cement stairs below him either. There's nothing to land on, falling headfirst backwards. But he also lets go of a grenade while he falls. And there's it's this really beautiful, slowly played out scene of him falling, dramatic music playing, flashbacks of a woman who we learn later his name is Julia, and then eventually the grenade goes off and Spike wakes up, and it's been 3 days later. He's covered head to toe in bandages and he's back on the Bebop, and nothing has changed.
This was one scene that I really got a good laugh out of, because he's laying there, and it became an important scene. It became an important thing where he was remembering Julia singing, or I don't know if it was Julia. It looked like it was Julia, from his memory, and just humming, I should say. And then now Faye is, I think, humming the same song, it sounded like. And so he's motioning at his mouth where the bandages are keeping his mouth shut. And so she comes over and puts her ear close, and he says tone deaf. And I don't know. I cracked up so hard. She just beats on him and leaves the room.
She slaps him.
It's great. Yeah. I mean, Jet comes in there and like the pillows ripped open, like she's beat on him with the pillow. That was actually a really endearing moment.
I do think it's a very much a artistic choice to have Jet pop his head out just like he did at the beginning and end of the first episode. It's almost the exact same motion. He's wearing his glasses, the apron, he's cooking. Again, everything has remained the same despite this huge thing. I mean, Spike should be dead.
Oh yeah,
everything's remained the same. I think that's.
Vicious should be dead too.
Vicious should be dead. Faye shouldn't know that song either. Anyway,
exactly.
Yeah.
Next episode, I'm gonna do the short version because this is a really cool episode and I really like the ending. But basically, they're chasing a guy who's in a wheelchair being pushed by a kid and get involved in this conspiracy. And when Spike confronts them, he realizes, oh no, it's the kid's the bad guy. And he just pushes around people he's crippled in a chair to look like he's taking care of them. But he's actually from Earth. This is where we learned like what happened to Earth. He was a human child on Earth. The gate crashed. There was an explosion. And ever since then, his body has stopped aging, and hundreds of years have passed, or something like that. And he's really a really, really old man. And the only thing that killed him is this ring that Spike comes across as this other bounty hunter who's trying to save his friend in the wheelchair, gives to him after dying. Spike, after already shooting this guy in the head once and not killing him because of his powers, makes a bullet out of the ring, gets this cool long pistol, and goes and confronts him on like a highway, makes him crash into a gas station, and then shoots him in the head. And the guy the kid ages into this old man and says, I can finally die, I can finally die. And there's a lot of harmonica, and Jeremy already mentioned that was not fun for him.
No. But I did catch the artistic reference about how he was basically, do you know how that feels? Do you know how that feels to want to die or to live so long that you're waiting for death? And that was really clear that they were pointing at Spike.
You know, it's interesting. He did say, "Yeah, right," because he goes, "Yeah, I know. Yeah, right." That because I was like, "Oh, he's gonna say yes," and he does. But then he said something like "as if" or "yeah, right," and I'm like, "Oh, that's kind of an interesting twist." I don't know if I fully understand why he said that. And I
It's like
still
he's in denial, is what it seems like.
yeah. Another episode. Again, the short version. This is Space Truckers. Okay, Jeremy, you complained about the blues. You complained about the jazz. How did you feel about the heavy metal?
It was loud, but it was all right. That wasn't too bad.
Uh, one thing I think Cowboy Bebop does really well. It does play with different musics in different episodes, and again, like I've already mentioned before, genres. It's obviously matching up genres, but it's also I like that it's playing with music. Heavy metal, not my thing. So this is one of my lesser favorite episodes, but basically this episode's about a trucker named VT, who everyone tries to guess her name and everyone gets wrong, and they end up paying her like $10 every time they get it wrong, right? And if they win, they get the stack of cash she carries around.
And the old dudes show up for this. It's like,
Yep,
what?
the old dudes. And this is on a different planet too. Anyways, she comes in after a delivery, goes to her favorite cafe, and it's full of bounty hunters, and she hates bounty hunters. She's like low life scum, worst people on the earth. And these bounty hunters are harassing this woman, this waitress, and so she comes to their defense while they're fighting. Spike, who's dealing with a hangover, drops eggs on his pants, gets involved, meets VT,
funny.
does not tell her his profession. They become nice friends, and then she realizes what he is, and she's like, "Get the hell out of here!" There's a very funny scene where Spike's ship gets destroyed by the same ruffians they just got done fighting. And the waitress is like, "Yeah, while you were talking, they were doing this." She's like, "Why didn't you tell me?" "I did just tell you."
That was good.
Though.
Yep.
Meanwhile,
I was
Go
a
ahead.
little bit confused at the fact that like it seems like every other bounty hunter is inept to the point where a trucker can defeat them in combat. Like multiple of them can be defeated by a trucker. And I know she's an important trucker with an important backstory, but it just I don't know, it still seems kind of weird that like everybody is so far below these characters. Like you were saying, Jason, Spike's super OP, but some of these characters are right up there too. It's just kind of weird.
I mean, they're rough and tumble truckers, right? But
well, she's not like Jeremy said. She's not a tracker.
She is now, but you're right. Yeah, she's got a backstory that maybe she wasn't.
That explains why she would fight so well. But your point still remains the same. Why is everyone else so bad at this?
Yeah,
right.
It clearly attracts like people at the end of their rope. I think there are those who excel, like the Cowboy Bebop, who even they struggle. But I think it also attracts people who are at the end of their rope and just aren't going to succeed no matter what, or more in the way.
This is our daddy's first bounty, or baby's first bounty.
The Bebop is actually chasing a guy named Decker, who is a guy with explosives that they're trying to catch. Faye accidentally gets the wrong guy, and the real one gets away. VT actually gives Spike and Faye a ride home, but then while she's driving, she hears about this guy named Decker, and she's like, "Well, you know what? Maybe I'll just take care of this."
1 second, I wanted to point this out. This episode is important because Faye actually gets hit by an explosive from Decker while she's in her ship, and when the smoke clears, she's literally just floating there, and her ship is in pieces all around her, just completely decimated. Right? I'm not remembering that wrong, right?
I thought there was a main chunk of it still left, but I honestly didn't pay enough attention. I couldn't really.
I mean, it looked to me like she was floating in space, but maybe there was some chunks. But when she gets on the ship to go with VT, and they get back, she winds up actually using her ship in this episode within like hours of her ship being annihilated.
Right, but they do call out that it was repaired. Like
How?
Jet
been
is working on the
hours.
repairs. I mean,
They
I
were
don't
like
know.
Jet's really fast at
springs.
working.
There were like
Maybe-
springs and
maybe it's
bolts
like
and
Legos.
twisted metal floating
Like
in the air.
Legos.
Those were not Lego pieces. That was shrapnel. There was like shrapnel floating around her in a bubble. And I was like, how did he repair that? And she's like, oh, all I have are these little hands. I don't have my guns. And I'm like, okay, so the damage you sustained that resulted in this complete mess was just losing your guns. That's all. Everything else is fine. Okay.
VT goes out. VT goes after the target, chases him down into a mine. They get in a mine explosion. The target dies. Spike and Faye show up and are trying to help her get out of the mine, but there's a collapse, so they have to use the nitro the bad guy was carrying. There's this really cool sequence about, okay, I'm going to fire my pod from my ship with the nitro at the door. I'm going to jump into empty space with earplugs in. Jason, I know you had a problem with the gun going off in empty space.
I'm no physicist, but I question whether the gunpowder could be ignited without oxygen.
Could there be oxygen left in the gun from when it was inside his ship?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, it would have depressurized. But let's for the hand waving sake say these are special bullets because they're in the future and they don't maybe they have their own little pack of oxygen with the primer, right? Even if that was the case, I actually really liked this scene just because it paid so much attention to the way movement would happen in space.
Yeah.
There's a couple moments in it that are a little dramatized as far as like how debris and stuff would move, but I liked that, you know, he's flying away from the ship, so he decides, oh, I'm going to use my gun to propel myself the other way. And I like that a lot.
That was cool.
After they escape, Spike's like, hey, I know your name. And it's because I saw the picture of your husband, who she's already mentioned had died. And her and her husband were a famous bounty hunter team. So she actually was a bounty hunter herself and has not liked bounty hunters since her husband died.
Mm-hmm.
All right. This next episode, I really like this next episode. I didn't remember this next episode. It started and I was like, most of these have felt familiar. Definitely remember VT and stuff. I had just drawn a blank on this one. And it's the one where the guy with the plant on Venus. And,
Oh, yeah.
And it
Oh,
starts.
dude, this one's so good.
And they start on like a passenger ship going to Venus, and these terrorists are trying to take over the ship. And Spike's there doing his, oh, I'm asleep, and beating you up. And then, oh, you're incapacitated. And there's this guy on the ship who sees all this and he's carrying this package. When they get to the spaceport, he mails off one package and he has a bag, and then he tries to attack Spike. And Spike easily beats him. He's like, what are you doing? He's like, you have to teach me, Sensei. You must teach me how you fight. I've never seen anyone fight like you do. And this is where we get the really cool scene of Spike saying Bruce Lee's philosophy about being like water when you fight. And there's a great scene where Spike also talks in the Venus atmosphere, which is full of helium, so his voice is very high-pitched and silly. But he does eventually agree to teach him, but while he's teaching him, these gang members show up. The guy sees them, and he gives Spike the bag, and he's like, hey, in 2 days, meet me at this church. I got to split. And he runs off. Spike, of course, looks in the bag, and there's this very rare plant that has been stolen by a gang. The gang is looking for this plant, and he realizes, hey, this whole gang is a bounty target, including the guy I just befriended. So Spike does some digging while Faye is looking for the gang leader. Spike does some investigating.
After gambling all her money away.
Yeah, already lost the bounty from the guys on the ship.
No, I found it funny that this was another establishing shot of like, yes, they all work from the Bebop, but they're not necessarily a team. Because she's like, hey, give me my cut. And so he gives her, you know, her money. And she's like, he goes, oh, you're going to deposit it at the casino, are you? She's like, better than a bank.
Again, there's a very good reason for that, but I can't say anything. Spike finds this, goes basically where the package was sent, and he finds the sister of the guy whose name is Rocco. The guy's name is Rocco. He finds the sister, and they had mentioned on the plane that, hey, some people are allergic to Venus. They just are. Please let us know if you have any issues. She's one of these people, and she's actually blind because of the atmosphere on Venus, and she needs special procedures. So she shows him the music box that was in the package, and Spike finds a trapdoor in there, and there's these special plant seeds. So it was hard for me to keep track. One of these things is for money, and one of these things is for medicine, which Rocco needs both of to take care of his sister. I think the plant is the money and the seeds are the medicine, right? But they're both extremely valuable. Either backwards?
Right. Yeah, you got them backwards.
Okay.
Yep. The seeds are 8 million apiece. Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, Rocco gets caught by the gang. He was evading them really well until he went into pee right next to him. Poor guy. Rough luck. They beat on him, and they basically get him to go to Spike to get the plant. And they thought, hey, we won't kill you if you take us get the thing. He goes to Spike, and he tries to turn on Spike, but he realizes Spike's a good guy. Spike mentions the sister. He's like, I know what you're doing. And he's like, Spike, you got to run. And the gang shows up. And a shootout starts. Faye shows up in her ship. She's taking out guys. And Rocco gets attacked, and he does the move. He does the flow like water. He knocks a guy down. And right after he does, he's like, hey, did you see Sensei? And he gets shot right in the chest. And the plant goes flying, and it dies.
You guys saw that shot coming, though, right? Like, the camera was slowing down, and he was celebrating.
At this point, Cowboy Bebop, it's like, we're not getting that
happy ending. Yeah, exactly.
And
still hurt though, because even though we didn't get a lot of time with them, they actually did build a decent rapport with the audience as well. Their almost friendship.
For a 13-year-old girl watching this was mouth over hand moment, right?
Oh, really? Okay.
It hit her. And Spike tries to comfort him and tries to help him, and he dies instead. And the bad guys are all caught, and we find out the sister got the money she needed, got the medicine she needed. Obviously, Spike had some influence in that, and he comes to visit her, and she's like, oh, I guess he was kind of a bad guy. He got messing with bad people. Now that he's, finds out he's dead. Spike's like, no. Well, Spike tells her he was the great guy you thought he was, and that's the end of the episode.
And you
the next episode, we get to meet Edward. In my notes, I always write down the character name and then attributes so I can remember who they are as I take notes. But with Ed, I just wrote Ed is Ed because that's all you need to know. Guys, thoughts on Edward, the genius child hacker person?
I liked the addition, but it almost felt a little unnecessary. I may feel different after watching the rest of this anime, but I did. I don't know. It felt at this point in the anime, it felt a little unneeded. Hasn't really blown up, but I did like the character as a character that can hack just about anything. Has a controller that they can hook up to nearly any flying object and fly. Game controller. And also I like this episode about a lonely AI.
I found Ed at first to be, I was curious, but then I found her very jarring. Because the rest of the characters set such a somber tone most of the time, and their interactions, they can be entertaining and endearing and everything, but everything Ed does is just like dialed up to 11. Every noise she makes, every movement as she's doing somersaults or hanging off of the ceiling or some other crazy thing, and so I just kind of found her to be just like I said, just kind of jarring. Like I'm starting to get comfortable with the tone of the rest of the characters, and then boom, screaming and laughing maniacally and flipping around, and so kind of weird. But I did like the inclusion of having a hacker involved on the team because none of them really have that skill. Jet he's all right, but having a real hacker come in was pretty cool.
I mean, I love Ed. Ed brings the innocence and the heart that the team is missing. I do think she's a vital component. I love the way her hacking is like this virtual reality fish game that would not make sense to any other human being who is trying to use it, but it's super effective for her. I also really love the building relationship between her and Ein, because everyone else just really abuses Ein. Faye eats his dog food. Spike doesn't want to talk to him. Jet's trying to put him on a diet. And I also love I think it's in the next episode where they have a bounty and Ed is attacking the bounty like a dog while Ein is sitting there like patiently and calmly watching her, and she's like biting on his ear and his leg like she's a vicious dog. They make a good team, but I do think she brings a layer that I think does help for the other characters, and also is good at calling out, hey, why aren't you working together? Why did you all leave? Like, that's insane. We have a job to do. We're working together. She forces herself into their lives, but she also brings a bit of emotional honesty because she's the innocent, naive character that I think they need.
It's almost like, essentially, I never thought of it that way before, but you made me think of something. It's almost like they've dialed the character's somber, melodramatic nature up so high with the rest of these that in order to compensate with this one character, they had to make her just like insane levels of emotional honesty and just craziness. But I see where you're coming from. It does make sense. She does kind of counterbalance them. It just has to be, she has to scream it in order to balance them.
I say this as someone who doesn't strongly remember everyone's backstories. I think maybe Spike's I know the best. Faye's I know, but like I don't remember Jet's and I don't really remember Edward's. I do know that those backstories are coming in the second half. I do wonder what your guys' impressions would be knowing their backstories, like why they are the way they are, if that would help with the rougher edges or not. It might not at all. It's really curious to me. But to be fair, if you are waiting till the end to reveal that, your character does have to survive on their own until that moment, right? You can't say I made a character you hate and then at the last minute said, but there's a reason, and then expect it to all be on us to put up with it. Okay, in this episode, basically the government thinks, this is on Earth, that a hacker is taking control of satellite and is carving pictures into the ground of Earth. But it's not. It's an AI from a old spy satellite that everyone thought was a weather satellite that has gotten lonely, and it's just taking over laser satellites to draw pictures because it's sad. Meanwhile, the real hacker, Ed, who actually discovers this is an AI, she gets attacked by the police, but she just takes over their cop car and makes it crash. The Bebop is looking for her, but that's what she wants. She wants the Bebop to find her. So she eventually works with the Bebop, tells them about the satellite, helps them to disable it, but also has befriended the satellite and is like, hey, we're going to turn you in, but it's going to be a copy. I'm going to download you and you can just come with us. And that's what she does. And then
now we don't see the AI interact again from this point. So I'm really curious. Like, if I was going to watch the rest of this series, I'd be really curious to see when that AI would pop back up, like if as part of this pocket computer or something. Mm-hmm.
They don't get paid.
Because robots are not bounties.
Robots are people, and robots can't be bounties. And they try to leave Ed. Faye, specifically it was Faye who promised she could join the Bebop crew. It never says it out loud till the very end of the episode. Faye's like, yeah, I'll keep my promise. And then she's like, Jet, just leave. Promises are meant to be broken. And they do. And Ed's like, I have control of your ship. And brings them back and is like, I'm on the crew. And she is now. Then we have the episode of Jet's past where he goes and visits his girlfriend who broke up with him. But her new boyfriend is a bounty target because he killed some loan sharks that were going to beat them up. And basically, Spike gets involved, and then eventually, but Jet's like, I'll take care of it. After he has this big long conversation with his ex-girlfriend about, like, hey, why did you leave me? Just one day I came home, there's a note saying farewell, and this watch, I've kept this watch this whole time. Why'd you leave? And she's like, oh, I don't remember. And he's like, whatever, bye. But then the whole chasing her boyfriend, him and her in a boat, and Jet finally catches them and they crash. She pulls a gun on Jet and she's like, stay away. And then she tells them the reason she broke up. And I mentioned this earlier. You were always right. You always knew what to do. You always told me what to do. I never had any mistakes to make because you took care of everything. And when I first watched this episode, I was like, oh, that's a bummer for her. But I was like, oh, no, that's the Jet we've literally been seeing deal with the Bebop crew the whole time. Spike, don't leave. Why do I always got to fix these things? But he's not making anyone else fix anything. He cleans up everyone's mistakes. He's always right about what they should do. And they do arrest the boyfriend, but he points out he's probably going to get off on self-defense and be out very soon, and it's not a big deal. And then he throws the watch away, and we deal with Jet's baggage. Like I think was already pointed out earlier, Jet's emotional baggage isn't as heavy or as big as the others. But I still like this episode. I did like that the honesty about why they broke up, and again, after thinking about Jet, realizing, oh, they've perfectly nailed what Jet has already been on this show the whole time, but just we saw it as his character flaw getting mistreated, but really how it could hurt someone else. I like that.
I did like how they were able to complete a bounty because Spike was not involved.
Yeah. Yeah.
He almost crashed into Jet too at one random point.
Yeah. Yeah, he did. I saw it very much as like when you see his interactions with the crew, none of them want to discuss with him when he makes a decision or he tries to get them to do something. He leaves it open for them to discuss it, but none of them want to. And I took that as like their character flaws, where generally they're either egotistical or whatever other reason. They don't want to talk about it. They're going to do what they're going to do, period. And so I was actually, when I saw his backstory with this lady, I was actually kind of irritated with her because, you know, he's not an unreasonable guy where he wouldn't be open to communication. If she was like, hey, can you explain it? Can we go over it? You know, why wouldn't we do this or why wouldn't we do that? And so to me, she just seemed like a very difficult person to work with.
Well, and, I don't think she's saying you never took input. I think she's saying you just always had the right answer. Like, and that was tough to deal with.
People, she wanted to be able to make her own mistakes.
Oh, that is the stupidest thing I've ever heard of.
Yeah, she was like, even if they're terrible. Really, yeah, she's like, even if it like is terrible for me, like I want to be able to make those mistakes. And she obviously has been doing that with this boyfriend.
Right, she's clearly in a bad situation.
I mean, as a society, we develop by standing on the shoulders of people who make good decisions so that we understand what not to do to duplicate bad decisions. That's really, she is a stupid person. Sorry, she is.
All right, we come to my favorite episode. I really love, I really love the first episode because it's the perfect example. This is Cowboy Bebop. You know, the sadness, the funniness, the action. It has a little bit of everything. If you like the first episode, you're gonna like everything else. If you're not on board with the first episode, you don't have to do the 3-episode rule with Cowboy Bebop. First episode, perfect summary of what you're about to get. But this is my favorite episode because it's about a little slime creature that is on the Cowboy Bebop while they're just floating in space, and it starts biting people, and it's poisonous, and they also do this really cool fisheye lens, but still animated, crawling through the vents scenes from the monster's point of view. And Cowboy Bebop's not an anime where there's been like aliens or other dimensions, so having like a monster like this is very unordinary, but they come up with an explanation for it. So there's this
silly one,
this monster. Yes. It bites Jet, and at first they just think it's a rat, and they're trying to make him drink herbal medicine, but he passes out, and they realize he's poisoned. So they're trying to figure out what's going on. Then Faye gets bit while taking a bath. I didn't know they had why do they have a nice bath on the Bebop? That's
right.
Weird. That one's weird. But she gets bit. So Spike and Edward put on heat vision goggles to go hunting for this thing. Ein goes into a vent after it. He gets bit, and Spike has to save Ein, and Edward disappears, and he can't find Edward. So he goes full on, and they've been setting up little items throughout not only this episode but throughout this season. Like he has the net shooter from Ein's episode. He has a flamethrower he was making kebabs with earlier. It's very much the aliens. I'm taping my gun to my flamethrower scene. This whole thing is an aliens homage, and one of the reasons I love it. And so Spike goes toe to toe with this thing, and manages to fight it and set it on fire. And then he realizes, oh, I made this thing because a year ago I bought a lobster. I didn't want anyone to know it, so I hid it in the back fridge, but I forgot about it. So
he forgot he had a fridge.
Yeah. Well, and Jet was like, I don't remember having a fridge back here. So yeah, they all forgot there was even a fridge. He like cracks open the fridge and there's like an entire ecosystem inside of it. So he turns
so disgusting, even though it's just drawn.
So he also, and this is important, he programs the ship to autopilot and land at Mars on its own. And then he pushes the fridge out the airlock, and he literally has the aliens fighting not to fall out of the airlock as it closes, but it's with a fridge instead of an alien queen. But the creature comes back and bites him, so he's dying now too, and the fridge is spiraling out to somber music, and we see Ed's not bit, and the monster comes up to Ed, and she's like, pudding.
She's sleeping.
And she fell asleep. She was just chilling.
But she did that in her sleep. That was a sleep thing.
Yeah.
She had no idea what she grabbed.
Yep.
This was incredibly confusing because, number one, a lobster doesn't transform into a monster by leaving it in the fridge for any.
It does in this anime.
I don't understand that. Was there like some kind of radiation, or like I don't get it. I don't understand why a lobster changed into a blob.
Tongue-in-cheek. He gave the answer at the end. It was tongue-in-cheek. He was like, "Don't leave stuff in the fridge too long."
The entire episode, they're doing like the 4 lessons of life, and the 4th lesson is don't leave stuff in the fridge.
Yeah,
and that's all it was. Don't think it too hard on this one.
This is a very silly episode. And in next episode, Ed does the announcement, and she's like, "We're all dead. We're dead. There's no episode. This is the end of Cowboy Bebop. We're dead." As it's showing clips of the next episode. Ed's just telling and everyone else is like, "We're not dead. We're still doing the episode, right?" And they're like, "Nope, we're dead."
See, and that's where, like, to me, this anime just kind of crosses into the ridiculous sometimes, and I just don't understand it. Like, it's so melodramatic, and then sometimes it's just so absolutely ridiculous, and I just get confused. I don't know what it's supposed to be.
Genre mashup, man.
A genre mashup.
Anyway, then we come to our final 2 episodes, which is actually a 2-parter. And we come back to Vicious, who's trying to sell Red Eye, and he's going to sell it on Callisto, which is a moon on Saturn or a moon on Jupiter.
I'm not sure.
It's a moon.
Definitely a moon.
The heads of there's these 3 old guys who are the head of the syndicate, and they're like, "You take Lynn with you." He's like, "I don't really like Lynn, but all right." And so Lynn's this young guy who goes with them. Meanwhile, on the Bebop, they're suffering from heat control, and they're stranded a bit because Faye's left. She broke stuff, and she stole all the money.
Yeah. Jet goes, "Yeah, she left," and Spike's basically happy about it. He's like, "We're not going after her, right?" And he's like, "She stole all the money." It's like, "Turn it." They were just gonna let her go.
Then they hear about a drug deal happening on Callisto by the name, I think Ed finds this out, by the name of Julia. And Spike freaks out when he hears that name, and he's like, "Well, I'm going. It doesn't matter." And Jet's like, "No, we got to go find Faye. We got to take care of that issue. We have stuff to deal with." He's like, "No, you find your woman. I'm going to find my woman." And Jet tells him, "Then we're done. Don't come back. I don't need this kind of, we're supposed to be a team. We've been a team for 3 years, which is specifically how long since Spike died from his, that Annie mentioned in that one episode." And so Spike leaves, and so he's looking for he's looking for Vicious, and he runs into some guys who are trying to ambush Vicious, and they think he's Vicious, and he's like, "You want to see Vicious?" And he just beats the crap out of him to take his frustration out. Meanwhile, Faye is hanging out in a jazz bar, and the saxophone player is being really nice to her. He specifies he's not flirting; he's not into her, but then she gets attacked by the same gang members, and she's like, "Oh, thank God! I wanted to beat someone up so bad." But this saxophone player, whose name is Gren, saves her, and we find out Gren's also the guy who's going to sell the drugs to Vicious, and the code name for the drug deal is Julia. Spike runs in, he finds Vicious, and he's gonna shoot him basically, and this Lynn guy steps forward, and Spike knows Lynn. He's like, "Lynn, no," and then Lynn shoots Spike, leaving him laying in the snow. And then Faye is whining to Gren about, how she left her friends or whatever, and he's like, "Yeah, you thought they were gonna leave you, so you left them, and you're kind of a mopey about it, aren't you?" And then Gren decides he's gonna go take a shower, and Vicious
There's no
calls.
peeking.
No peeking. Vicious calls on the phone. Faye, having been captured by Vicious, recognizes his gravelly voice, and then goes to attack Gren in the shower. And Gren has lady parts, breastises, but also manly parts.
Yep.
And so she's caught off guard, and that's where the first episode ends. But then the next episode, which continues right from here, Gren tells his backstory. Basically, he was a soldier in the war on the Moon Titan, serving with Vicious. They had befriended each other, but then afterwards, Gren had been thrown in prison based on Vicious's testimony, and he wants to know if Vicious turned him in and cheated or betrayed him. Yeah. And when he was in prison, he was also took part in experimental drugs, and that's why it changed his body. But he's going to use that to his advantage. So because he just wants to get close to Vicious and find out what really happened. Spike awakens. He was shot with a tranquilizer, not a real gun, which he thinks is super lame. And then he asks which direction. He's like, "Where's east?" And the bird flies off. He's like, "Thanks, buddy," because the bird tells him where to go. Meanwhile,
it's not real.
Yeah.
Jet is also investigating what's going on, and he gets some information about that Julia was here once. He doesn't know who Julia is, but he knows she was here. And he eventually gets to Gren's apartment, where Faye has been captured by Gren because she tried to stop him, and so he saves her, and then they call Spike, and he's like, "Hey, I know where Gren and the Julia thing is happening." And he tells Spike, and he's like, "Hey, if you capture Gren, then you can come back." So Spike goes there, and basically the drug deal happens, but it's a double cross. Vicious was trying to kill Gren, and he said, "I don't want to meet with Gren. You can send his female helper, right?" But it's actually Gren dressed as a woman because he can appear that way.
Actually, Vicious wanted to meet with Gren, and he said it was a shame that he wouldn't be able to see him.
Oh, I thought Vicious was the one who didn't want to meet with Gren.
Nope.
Oh, okay.
Gren said, "I'm going to send my female helper."
But the money was actually a bomb.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And Gren realizes this and kicks it back at him. And basically they end up in a three-way ship battle. Vicious in his, Spike in his, and Gren in his, and helping each other. Gren's ship gets hit. Spike manages to hit Vicious's ship. Vicious heads back to his big syndicate ship. And then Spike goes to Gren, who's crashed on the ground. Gren is clearly dying, and as mentioned, he's dying anyway from the side effect of the drug, and that's why he wanted to get this done. And he has to go back to Titan, is my understanding.
Yeah.
I don't know if you mentioned specifically, but I think he wants to go back to Titan. He's like, "It doesn't matter if I get there before I die. I just want to know I'm on my way. So help me launch my ship in that direction." But he does mention, Julia was here, and she did talk about you a lot, which is what Spike wanted. He wanted information on Julia. So Spike helps him, goes back to the Bebop. he's like, all right, can I come back in? Just like, what do you got? He's like, I got nothing. He's like, yeah, hurry up, we're leaving. They get on the beat. He gets on the Bebop, and then at the beginning of the first episode of these two, and at the end, it's the same scene. It's the same Native American. I don't know if it's yeah. Anyway, they see a star fall from the sky, and he tells his son, like, that means a warrior who wasn't able to go to heaven has died, but their soul wasn't able to pass on, and that's what the star falling means. And they show it at the beginning, making you think it's the beginning, and then you learn chronologically it's the last thing that happens, symbolizing Gren died on the journey to Titan.
Mm-hmm. That was actually an interesting character, very, again, melodramatic and somber. But I thought it was interesting because the big thing with Gren was that he felt such a strong camaraderie with his squad, and specifically Vicious, that while he was in prison, he could never let go of that desire to be with friends again, even though those friends were kind of jerks. but he still wanted to be with his friends so bad that it actually drove him nuts, insane. And so, yeah, it was very weird. But I liked that story a little bit more than some of the others.
Yeah, I did like this. Again, this is one I didn't really remember well. I was kind of caught by surprise by this thing. Again, I'm not really sure what's going on with Vicious, and why he even did all of this. Why be nice to this guy? Was it just to set him up from the very beginning? Probably. But also, why does Vicious care so much about Spike? Because it almost seems like Vicious has his own over attachment to Spike, much like Gren has with Vicious. It does seem like a little bit of a triangle, and Julia seems to have been the catalyst that caused everything that fell out, right? So, interesting stuff.
My guess is Spike was in love with Julia, and then something happened where, like, somebody had to kill her or something. She disappeared. But who knows? I have no idea.
And that is the real folk blues. Anyway, let's go on to our final reviews. Jason, you picked it. What do you want to give this one?
The thing is, I just don't have a lot of complaints about this show. I really liked that this show really respected the audience as far as storytelling. They did a lot of showing and not telling, and the stuff that they showed was relevant to what they were trying to tell. Like, the stuff that we learn about Earth is not ham-fisted to the audience. Like, we glean that through multiple episodes of finding out what happened to Earth, and that it's no longer a habitable place. Well, I mean, it is habitable, but it's not, what it is today. And it's funny because it wasn't as entertaining as some other anime, but like I said, I have no complaints. It was a great anime. The characters I really liked. And I just like the overall storytelling. I kind of feel like I have to give it a 5. I almost don't feel like I should, but yeah, it is. I just don't have any complaints. It's pretty good.
All right, Jeremy, how about you?
So, like I said, I saw a lot of top lists with this as number 1, so I know that I am going to be in the minority here. But I definitely was really impressed with the art, and I do agree that the manner of storytelling is really good when it comes to show don't tell, like you were saying, Jason. But there's just little things that bug me about how, for instance, there's one scene where Spike is chasing a car, and he actually gets run off the road, and he winds up in the very next shot being inside of his swordfish, which was all the way across town from where he ran from initially. And it's just things like that maybe they're non-consequential to most people, but to me they kind of bug me because it breaks the continuity. If this is a high-speed chase that's going on and he's run this far away, and it's important for the story that he is still here but now in his ship, and so you just put him in his ship, that to me is kind of lazy storytelling. To elicit something through artistic. Essentially, to put the art above the simulation is what bugs me. So for that, I found several instances where I ran into that in one form or another, and that really just, I don't know, it just messes with the logic side of my brain. So I really didn't like that. But the characters, at times they were endearing, sometimes they were just too weighty for me. But in the end, for me, it's just really a take it or leave it. I got to give it a 3 out of 5.
All right. Obviously, it's going to be a 5 for me. But I will say the first time I saw Cowboy Bebop, again, it hit that. This is something I've never seen before in anime at that time, right? Others have come along and done the Cowboy Bebop thing since then. But it definitely was that very sweet spot of this is wholly original and something I've never thought I'd see in anime before when I first watched it. Having now watched it again, like I said, after a couple years of doing this podcast, learning how to see more than just what's being presented, dig a little deeper, I enjoyed it even more. I found layers in it, and there's layers that make me want to dig harder and get deeper into it. So I really enjoyed watching it again after not having seen it for a while. I hope that if there was something, and I tend to like everything, but if there was something that everyone else thought was great that I honestly did not care for, that I would have the guts to be like, yeah, not for me. I really hope I would do that and not just be like, well, look, everyone loves it, so clearly it's a 5 and I give up. I hope I wouldn't do that, but yeah, but it is a 5 for me. Our next anime is another classic, maybe not as much so on list, but definitely one that a lot of people love. It's called Claymore. This definitely needs to come within a parental advisory warning, which maybe Cowboy Bebop should have, but this one definitely. Is very violent. Problem with that anything is just how violent it is. But I do think there might be some nudity and stuff. But we're just
it's combat nudity. So
combat nudity.
Combat nudity, yeah.
Sounds like a Wednesday night for me.
What is this? Is this Queen's Blade?
It's a tame version of Queen's Blade, yes.
We're just watching the first 13 episodes. 13 episodes.
What are you trying to say?
I just want to make sure everyone is hearing it out loud.
On the same page.
How many episodes we're going to be watching. This is one Jeremy, you've seen it, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I saw this a long time ago. Really
I think I've seen one episode. I think I saw the first episode, thought it was cool, and then it was like that. It was in a time where it's like it was hard to follow. You couldn't just stream anime like you used to. So I'm excited to go back and check this out. And it's about
it's about female warriors that fight yokai, which are these monsters,
and they're like hybrids, right? They're like it's for female warriors who battle demons.
Yeah, basically.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
And the first season is, in my opinion, the better season. So we're getting the good end of the stick here.
Very good. All right. If you have any thoughts on Cowboy Bebop, that anime that hardly anyone's heard of, please let us know on our Twitter at Baka Podcast, our email, the Anime Baka Club at gmail.com, or leave a comment wherever you found this podcast so we can continue the discussion that we have started here. We really appreciate that. And we will look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Let's go ahead and say goodbye.
Thanks for listening.
Later.
No, Jeremy, you're going to say it.
What am I going to say?
You got to say, see you later, Space Cowboy.
Oh, see you later, Space Cowboy. That's right. See you later, Space Cowboy.
Sayonara.